Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for being here today. This is Kate Bennis, and she is a speech coach who has graciously agreed to help us out with Microgrid 2021. Kate has a lot of experience helping folks like us who want to present ourselves well on the screen. You've heard of many of her clients: American Express, CIA, Federal Reserve, AOL, Harvard Business School. That's just a few. I could go on and on. And if Kate looks familiar to you, it's because she's also an actress. And if you happen to be a House of Cards fan, as I was, you may recognize Kate. So Kate, we're here today, and we asked you to be here today because we tend to speak a very technical language where our expertise is in energy. And for this conference, we want to reach an audience that may not have that level of expertise. These are the customers of microgrids. Other conferences we've had have tended to focus more on the energy insider, but this one is, the university, the business, the community that's interested in microgrids and has come to find out more about it. So we want to speak their language. So one of the things I'd love to do today is talk about how we can do that. We also all, this is a new world to all of us, this virtual world, and we need to know more about how to present ourselves well. And so I'd love any tips you can give us.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here, Lisa. So a few things. First of all, what you started with is the audience, which is everything. The audience is the only reason that we're here. One thing that is really important is that wherever the lens of the camera is the eye of your audience. And I'm sure you have all seen this happen before, where you'll see people talking to you like this, right? Because they're looking at you where you happen to be that day on the Zoom screen, all right? And instead of looking just at the audience, okay, so I've got my window in front of me. You want to make sure that there's nothing too busy in the back of you, like traffic out a window or a fan whirring up and something that's going to distract the audience. We want to make sure that you are the most important thing that they're seeing. So wherever you're sitting, just make sure that the light is coming at you from the front and not from the back. All right.
So no windows behind you.
No windows behind you, exactly. If you can avoid it. I've got a window, but I have these shades that I pull there because it could be too bright. Exactly. And you don't want anything movement. That goes, that sense of movement and things that can kind of be wonky on camera also applies to what you're wearing. So big jangly earrings that might hit a microphone, colors or that are black or white, I have to say. Sorry,
wrong color.
It's okay. But just be aware that if you were in a black room, it would be like it would look very, very odd. So you want to make note of what your background colors are. I personally like solid colors. Things that are too, that have a very small pattern on camera can be kind of wonky. So again, all of this has to do with including the audience, looking at them in the eye, making sure there's nothing distracting behind us, being in a space that feels appropriate and like they're invited in, having yourself seen and heard, having light coming at you from the front, and being able to hear people is really important. And if we don't do those technical things, which are pretty easy to fix, we're not going to communicate. They're literally not going to see and hear us. They're literally not going to see our expression.
So I think one of the most important things for me that you just said is that we want to look at the audience and speak to them and not speak to the video of the face of the person we see on the screen. I think we constantly make that error when we're trying to talk to the audience. So that's a great tip. Thank you.
It's so hard to remember that because, of course, we respond to other people's expressions. So we want to connect with them that way, but we have to remember the audience doesn't see it that way. They feel left out. If I was talking to you like this, right?
Yes.
They really need to see us. Yeah.
And that is the camera. I think people also get confused. Well, what is the thing I'm supposed to be looking at? It's the camera that's usually at the top of your screen.
The lens of the camera. So it will either be an external camera, mounted on top, or one of them embedded in your screen. Yeah. Or if you're doing it, this is also tricky, on your phone. Phones are interesting because the camera is on the side here. So you're not looking towards the center. When you're filming on your phone, you want to film on the back camera because they're far better than the selfie camera. And you want to make sure you're looking right here. This is the thing I would ask the presenters. what is it that the audience is going to get, aside from the Q&A, from this presentation that they couldn't get just by reading it in advance? Why do they need you there talking about it? What is it that you as a human being are bringing to this? And that, I think, will help the presenter remember their intention. And intention is something that I talk about all the time with all my clients. Why am I here? What am I here to do? And if you're very clear about that intention, what am I here to do? I'm here to share every piece of knowledge I have about this. I'm here to help people who don't understand why microgrids are important understand why their community might need it. I'm here to, whatever it is, be really crystal clear on why you are there. And that will activate and sort of animate all of the performance, really. It's a performance. And it will also help us when we're speaking and there's a large, the slide usually dominates, right? And then our picture becomes very small in these. So we want to make sure that then it's our voice that is guiding people through understanding the graph. I would also say Zoom takes a lot more energy and focus than being in the room with someone. So keep things to a minimum, keep slides. You might want to cut down the number of slides you would normally use, especially with a conference like this, which is many hours. We want people to be engaged every minute. So that means we need to work on creating that engagement. So using your voice in an expressive way, using your body and your ideas and your creativity to bring them in as much as possible, understanding that the slides are important, but you are there explaining them in a way they could never get from just seeing the slide. One thing that I would also say then is take as much text off of the slide as possible. If you just have a graph or an image and they need to listen to your voice to understand it, that would be great. Because otherwise they're going to read ahead or get bored by seeing too much text and disengage, right? So they're going to read ahead and they will have finished by the time you're talking about something. So to really keep them engaged and with you, I would take as much text off of the slides as possible and just use your voice to explain it.
I wanted to just jump back to technical again, because I forgot to ask you something, if you don't mind. You helped me tremendously before we started because I didn't have my microphone set up correctly. Why should I have an external microphone rather than the internal microphone that my computer has? What's going to be the difference that I'll see? Relating to that idea of voice being so important.
Yeah, it really depends on the room you're in and the microphone that is built into your computer or your phone. So what I have found is that rooms that are have lower ceilings, or where you have what actually moved Lisa into the corner so that she has this, it warms up your voice to have a closed in space. There's a great TED Talk that's linked on the sheet that I'll send all of you guys to Lulu Miller, who's an NPR producer, showing how NPR producers and interviewers and journalists all over the world make great sound everywhere in the world. They bring their jackets on top of their heads. They go into closets. They make, pillow forts because you want to warm up the sound. And that's hard to do. So if you can't do all that, a great microphone can help you.
That's fascinating.
I'm sure you guys have heard so many people sound, it's like they're in a cavern when they're speaking, right?
Yeah, that's great, because NPR, their voices are the best of all. They always sound like they're right there with you.
Yeah. And oftentimes they're just under their coat. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Another technical piece before we move to content is this moment before you speak and when you end. The editor will love it if you take a breath before you begin, because they're going to know where to cut, and when you end. It doesn't need to be an audible breath. There's another reason to do it. It will ground you as a speaker. And another piece is that it grounds the audience. When you breathe, the audience breathes. When you don't breathe, the audience gets more and more tense and feeling anxious, and they don't know why. So every performer knows that when you breathe, you give everybody a chance to transition. You would never just chuck a ball at somebody, right? Without looking at them in the eye, making sure they're ready. So that breath also is that. It's you checking in with the audience. Are we ready? Go. So that's a kind of technical piece and kind of a performance piece. And that ties into this next piece I wanted to talk about, which is what I ask people to do. Listen, you are all masters already of this information. You know what you're talking about. This is your life, right? This is what you do for work. This is what you're interested in. You are masters of that. So now the next piece is to say, how do I pick out the pieces that are right for my audience? What do they most need to know? And keep it really simple and clean. If you can think, I want them to come away with 3 new ideas or 3 pieces of information that are really going to push them forward in this. Really try to whittle it down. You only have 10 minutes, I think. Is that right? How long are most of these?
7 to 9 minutes for the
They're
webinars.
short, right? Yep. Really be very conscious of, again, who is your audience? What do they most need to know? I always ask people almost in every situation to craft and memorize their opening lines and their closing lines. And then everything else in there is kind of just a very solid outline to know these are the main points I want them to get. Mm-hmm. Okay. But the opening and closing line, there's a few reasons for that. Number 1, that's when most people are anxious. Number 2, so I might do this. I might say, thank you so much, Lisa. Then my breath, right? And then the first thing that I want to talk to you about today is blah, 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 right? So there's kind of a break between the thank yous and then now we're going to start. There's that breath and then launch. And that opening sentence can be a really nice grounding if we know what we're going to say and how we're going to start. The same at the end. You'll hear people that just kind of meander on and on and on and on and on, right? It's nice to have a nice period at the end of that and say, now I'm done. Sit with the silence. The editors will love you. The audience will know you're done. Any questions? Right? And then you go into the Q&A. So yes. It's nice to have that kind of arc with a clear sense of 3 things you're going to cover.
Perfect.
And 3 things. Yeah. The other thing is that I would say that every fact has to be followed up by an example. People do not remember your facts. They remember your stories and examples. So if you can think of a vivid example to illustrate, right? So if you're going to tell a fact about why microgrids are important, especially in hurricane season, tell a story about Puerto Rico, or tell a story about a family after Katrina, or tell a story about one group that was able to, handle in the Bahamas a terrible storm because they had a microgrid. Tell a story.
Thanks, Kate. Appreciate this so much. That was Kate Bennis of Kate Bennis Studio. You can find her website. I suggest you do. It's got some great additional tips. And we'll see you all at Microgrid 2021.